everybody to this webinar. I will start the whole session with a strong focus on project assessment and financing. I think when we are talking about renewable energy, we all know that in terms of the CapEx and also sometimes the OpEx, it is a challenge for the industry to go towards the real implementation of these projects. So there are some very nice solutions out there, and hopefully together with the other two speakers, we are able to give you some insights, some new ideas how to overcome this barrier. I want to start briefly with a short introduction of AEE Intec. So why am I one of the speakers today? Then we'll hop over to the international perspective of solar process heat and generally renewable energy. Share some know-how about project development, what is finally the basis for this, as we call it, the standardized project assessment and financing. So this is my agenda for the next about 30 minutes. We are working on energy and resource efficiency now over the last 33 years already. So in the meanwhile, we have set up and established a very good network on European level. So what you see here is more or less the leading activities and initiatives on energy and resource efficiency in Europe. We are here also part of some executive committees, some advisory boards. So I think we have a very good expertise and background in this field. We also have a very large international network, what is mainly based on our work together with the International Energy Agency. So you can see that more or less we are involved in all technology collaboration programs, these typical TCPs. Very important for us is this SHC, solar heating and cooling. And here we are also representing Austria in the executive committee. So over the last 33 years, we have gained a lot of expertise in this field. Very important also for me to mention that we are very thankful to be able to work together with the United Nations Industrial Development. What is also the case here in this Malaysian project. So now over the last 6 to 7 years, I had the opportunity to visit Malaysia very often, and I'm already looking forward to get this chance again to visit Malaysia in some months, hopefully. So what I'm working on mainly, I'm head of the Department Industrial Systems. We have, amongst other topics, developed the European standard for energy audits in industry. So this is the basis of everything what we're doing actually. So we are working a lot in the field of digitalization, Industry 4.0, digital twin, and doing this mainly to support the industry in terms of achieving the set climate targets to get rid of the fossil fuels more or less. Why are we doing this? Because we are really convinced that this is necessary. Beside all these big targets that have been set, we know that the industry is facing here some challenges, and we also know and believe that the solutions are already out there. So therefore, we are not doing basic research as the universities are doing this. We are doing applied research. So whatever we are going to develop, we always want to and intend to share with the industry, with consultants, with experts, how it is the case with these in red marked part, solar heat for industrial processes. This is the reason why I have the chance to work together with my colleagues in Malaysia here. So now, based on this introduction, let's come to the international perspective. I think we are all aware of the set climate targets. We want to get rid of the fossil fuels. This is our big goal. I think we all know about the conference in Paris. We all know about the challenges and the initiatives that are ongoing. And I know that especially in Malaysia, this decarbonization is a very big topic. And this is, you have implemented the outcomes of the Paris Agreement. So this is also very important for Malaysia. So how to get rid of the fossil fuels is to substitute them by renewable energy. And when we're talking about renewable energy, there is a big bunch of possibilities out there. This is energy efficiency, it's heat pumps, it's biomass, it's biogas, it's photovoltaics to produce electricity, and very important is also to address this by solar process heat. So use the energy from the sun to produce heat to support and supply then the industrial demand. And I'm very convinced that in the opposite to the existing situation, where we know that a natural gas-driven boiler was more or less the one and only solution in the past. So you had one gas boiler supplying all the energy, mainly the thermal energy, to the processes. If we want to achieve the targets in the future, doing this together with renewable energy, well, then we have to come up with, as we call it, hybrid solutions. So this is not a single or monovalent solution. It will be a very nice combination of different renewable energies, ensuring that the industry gets the energy when they need it. And very important in this field is, as I already mentioned in the starting slide of my presentation, the investment for renewable energy is in some cases higher than it is for a natural gas boiler. So here we need innovative industry who is willing to be the front runners, who is willing to, let's say, show that it works, and we need investors who are willing to take the risk from their perspective, to give their money to these projects, and by this overcome the barriers that are obvious actually. Some activities we are working very intensively on this topic is the International Energy Agency tasks within the TCP solar heating and cooling. It is actually the task 64. For your information, we have been, sorry, too fast, we have been working on this already over the last 10 years. There was starting tasks 33, then there was a follow-up task 49, that we were the operating agent of, and actually we have the task 64. So it's a specific task where international organizations work together, addressing the challenge of solar heat for industrial processes, and combine their ideas and, more important, their solutions, and by this be able to deliver these solutions, to deliver this expertise to all interested partners worldwide. We know that the big challenges actually are these integrated energy systems, so how to combine solar process heat with other renewable energy sources. This is addressed, it's following the work program of such a task in a subtask A that is led by the University of Kassel. Then we are addressing the topic of modularization. This tries to support the industry and also the suppliers to say how to plug solar process heat with another technology and let the system play. So it should be plug and play solutions based on simulation and design tools. This is another subtask that is actually led by a partner from Chile. And to spread this information worldwide, we have a subtask D that is led by an institute, a research institute in Greece, GRES, who is working on standardization and certification. And finally, as I'm convinced that very good solutions are already out there, there is a subtask E that I'm head of. I'm co-leading it with the Fraunhofer Institute, Guideline to Market. So how to bring these solutions to the market, how to convince the industry, how to convince the investors. So this is actually that you see that there is a very high priority set to this also on the international perspective. And now let's come from the international perspective to the Malaysian perspective. Why is solar process heat that relevant for Malaysia? If you have a look at these figures on the right side to see which of the industry sectors in Malaysia are consuming most of the energy, well, it's obvious that it's the iron and steel sector. We have the non-metallic mineral product sector, and we have a sector, food, beverage, and tobacco. Yeah, okay. Very important for us is, and this is the reason to spread this information, is to see the numbers of companies that are working in these sectors. And you see that especially in the food and beverage industry, but also rubber, pulp and paper, iron, steel, machinery, chemicals, we have a lot of companies working in this field in Malaysia. And to bring the international perspective to the Malaysian perspective, this is quite comparable to the situation in other countries worldwide, to the States, to European states, to Southern American states, as Chile, for example. So whatever we are going to develop on the international perspective, is of very high relevance also to the Malaysian industry. Nevertheless, the challenge is that, and now bring it back to the solar process perspective, process heating accounts for up to 65% of the industrial energy use. So whatever we need to supply in terms of the energy in the industry sector, we do this, or of this energy that is brought to the sector, 65% of this are used for process heating and cooling. So you see that 2/3 of the energy is used for this. We are also completely aware, and I did about 700 detailed energy audits in the last 10 years, so I know that there are a lot of projects out there addressing energy efficiency and renewable energy that are economically feasible. So where, from my perspective, it's obvious that you have to do this. And when I'm talking about economically feasible, this means projects with a payback less than 6-7 years. And there are a lot of projects out there with a payback less than 3 years. But nevertheless, I see that a lot of these projects do not get implemented. And why, if we have a close look on this, is the first challenge, the risk mitigation problems, that whoever has to give the money to finance these projects do not have enough expertise to do this assessment. So I always take this example in Austria. When you go to your bank and saying, I need some money to renovate my house, then it's obvious that these persons at the banks know how to do this assessment. Well, but this is not the case for these industrial projects addressing solar process heat or other renewables. Based on this, we face very high transaction costs, so especially compared to the capital requirements. So another issue that we have there, and very important is the challenge when we especially focus on small and medium enterprises. The big companies, the large companies, they can overcome these hurdles, while the small and medium enterprises have the challenges here. So here, this is a lack of necessary credit and performance guarantees. Also, an issue is that we have no standardized procedures out there. So how to do this assessment is still not completely standardized. It is to a certain point in the building area, but definitely not for the industry. Now coming to the opportunities, and this is very important for the investor. So what can I invest and what can I earn here? Again, being aware, having a look at the total energy demand for industrial process heating and cooling, we know that 60% of this energy can be addressed either by energy efficiency or state-of-the-art renewables. And this is very important to me, for me to say that whatever I propose here is not an innovative, not yet tested technology. We rely and base on renewable technologies that are completely proven. Solar process heat, we are working in this field over the last 30 years. So this is not rocket science anymore. We have up to 400 real implementations out there worldwide already. So obviously this technology works quite well. How to address this 60%? Well, 8 to 10% based on energy efficiency measures with a payback of less than 5 years. And more important, 50%, so the 60%, 10 plus 50, can be done by renewable technologies, as I already said, state-of-the-art as solar thermal. Also biogas and biomass technologies are part of the solution, but to highlight this, solar thermal is very, very important. Okay, so now we know the framework conditions. We know that everybody in the field of renewables is actually working on the solutions out there, as seen in the solar heating and cooling task 64. We know that it is very relevant for the Malaysian industry, for this sector, and we know that the solutions are already out there, also for solar thermal. The challenge for these transaction costs, this risk assessment that I already mentioned, is that in many cases, the challenge lies in the field of the project development. So who is going to develop the concepts that are then presented to the industries, that are presented to the investors to convince them to go for this implementation. So tools that are needed. Well, why do we need it? The tools and the standardized procedures have to address a quick design of solar process heat. So whenever I'm using now SHIP, this stands for solar heat for industrial processes. So this should not be a quick and dirty analysis and concept design. This should be already a reliable concept and solution that takes care about the process demand, what is one of the most influencing parameters, which components are needed. So we need a collector, we need a storage, we need a heat exchanger, we need some piping, we need a control strategy behind it. Again, not rocket science. This is more or less completely the same that you would need for a natural gas boiler when you want to implement it. And the same is needed in the design and control and operation phase of SHIP, of course. And this is the basis for very detailed system simulation. This is very important for the technical and economic feasibility study. And this is the most important thing to convince and support the industry in the decision-making process. So just think about your projects that you had in the past, from the consultants, the expertise, the industry, and also the investors that we have online today. At the end, you have to see a reliable concept in front of you, and this is the basis for your investment decision. Very important, double check of the received concepts from external experts and offers from the solar companies. What I want to say with this is that if you present something to an investor, the investor will always have to do a double check if these presented figures are reliable, if they can support a consistency check there. And my message to you is whatever or whenever you are developing a concept, do not do this only for one day. We need a reliable analysis over a period of 1 year. And if you do so, this is an example how such an analysis could look like. You see here the solar delivery, the energy that comes from the solar energy, what you do when you have a surplus of energy coming from the sun, what you do when you need more energy than the sun can actually deliver. And this increases the reliability and the trust in this concept that is finally developed. And what is needed again here is we need high-level concepts that are ready for implementation. With this, you can convince the industry and then bring the financing expertise also to the project. My experience is that the top management of industry, in many cases, of course, they are interested in quick and dirty concept developments, but these are not the basis for the investment decision. For an investment decision, these concepts that are presented have to be on a very high technical and economic standard. And this is the message that I want to give you, that it's worth to work on this. So this is the project development, and now I come to one idea how to do this project assessment and finally be the basis for a financing scheme and financing possibility for energy efficiency and projects in the field of solar process heat. Whatever I'm going to tell you now is the outcome of a Horizon 2020 project in Europe. We have here a funding scheme financed by our commission in Europe that knows about the challenges and the hurdles and barriers that we have here already mentioned and identified in the last years. So we got awarded by the commission to develop here new and innovative ideas how to do this. And Trustee was such a project funded within this scheme. Well, what is Trustee about? It's on the one hand about a technical and economic evaluation of projects in the field of energy efficiency and renewable energy. It supports the developer in terms of a technical optimization and mainly with contractual standards and addressing risk protection via insurance solutions. So I already mentioned the challenge of these high transaction costs, and a basis of these high transaction costs are caused by the setup of contracts between all involved stakeholders. I will address this a bit later, but we have to be aware of this. And the outcome of it is that in the beginning, you do a project assessment, you address all these risks, and at the end, someone who is asking for money gets a refinancing after a successful commissioning of a plant or measures that have been identified. So this is the introduction now. I will show you now in more details how this assessment works. There is a web-based, so an online platform. So this is not a tool you have to download. It's accessible for everybody out there. It's the so-called trustee platform. So this is a screenshot how it looks like, and everything what you have to do in the beginning is you have to register yourself. So I think it's quite clear to everybody, if you want to get a financing for a project, we have to know who you are and what you want to implement in the industry. So registration, very quick, not a big effort. And then we want to know some more details. So where are you from? In which field are you working? Have you done already projects in the past? And in which industry sector do you want to implement your project? And with this basic information, we are able to do a quick check about your risk assessment, or doing this risk assessment in the background. So we already know at this stage if you, the proposer, are a potential customer for the trustee refinancing model. And then you have several possibilities. You can come up with projects in the field of biogas, biomass, energy efficiency, and more. And most important for us, the solar process heat for industrial processes. So you see, this is not rocket science again. Whatever we are going to ask from you is to say, which collector have you chosen? Where do you want to integrate solar process heat? Do you have a storage? Do you have a heat exchanger? What is the substituted energy carrier that is actually used in the industry? What are the costs for this energy? So not a lot of information, more or less the output of whatever you would also present to an investor when you are asking for some money for doing the implementation. And if you have provided this, we are doing or call a background simulation on a very high level. So this is programmed in Python or whatever we have done for these different technologies. And the output of this risk assessment is more or less a comparison of whatever you have developed and and presented to the industry to what we would have done. And if this matches to a certain point, we know that this is, from the technical point of view, a bankable project. And the same is done on the economic point of view. So we're also saying if the setup of the whole investment idea and the refinancing idea is well done or not. And the output is then a report with which we are saying, again, this is a bankable project. And the most important thing is then how to do this refinancing. So on the right side, you see a typical model, a financing model of a supplier who is with the blue line shows the revenue, the red line is the credit line, so whatever this supplier gets from a bank. And in yellows, you see the credit amount that is necessary per project. So you see a project is started, developed by such a supplier, and in the moment of a successful implementation, her whole money is then transferred from the end user, the implementing industry, to the supplier, and everything works quite well. This is a potential scheme for projects with a very low capex, what is not the case for solar process heat. Solar process heat has a high capex. So one solution in the past that was implemented several times is a typical ESCO model. Yeah, so the supplier takes over the whole risk, takes over the operating, and is doing and operating and selling the energy to the industry over a certain period of time. The challenge is again that the credit line that the supplier gets from the bank is still limited. So this leads to the fact that the supplier cannot afford to do a ESCO financing for 2, 3, 4, 5 projects, but is limited to a very low number of these projects. So again, this is not really a solution. How does trustee overcome this? Well, we are saying more or less the same. In the beginning, somebody goes to our platform saying, look, I want to implement this project, this technology, and we sign a so-called framework contract with the supplier. Part of this framework contract is that we are saying you are doing the project development, and as soon as you are ready for the implementation, this is the second point, you go to our platform, do the risk assessment and the technical assessment, And if you have done this well, you get a green light from us to do the project realization. So the supplier implements the collectors, installing them on the roof, on the ground. And if this is successfully done, we are doing it like this, that in this moment of the successful project realization, we purchase the receivables from the supplier, and we are then the ones who are selling the energy towards the industry at the end. So summarizing this again, in the beginning, the framework contract, so an agreement with the supplier, which products, the contract standards, the payment schedule, the single project template, this assessment via the trustee platform. The third point is the project realization and the acceptance by the end user, and at the end, you have the purchase of the receivables through trustee. So after a successful project start, we have the advantage for the service provider or the supplier that she or he gets all the money back in this moment of the successful implementation. He is still on board as being the one who is responsible that it, from the technical point of view, works quite well. And the end user more or less follows a typical ESCO model. So he has to pay according to the fixed payment plan after the successful acceptance, and then either on the energy savings or this baseline or unconditional payment obligations to trustee. So this is the idea behind it. Who is doing this investment? This is the so-called trustee securitization vehicle, what is subject to a special capital market regulation. No details are necessary here. It's quite a state-of-the-art financing scheme, but for the very first time done for renewable energy. It's established under the name Sustainable Future Trustee in Luxembourg because the law there has the highest investor protection in Europe. The trustee platform that I already showed you acts as an advisor to the securitization vehicle and prepares the purchase of the receivables. So we are saying this project is bankable. We are giving the green light towards the securitization vehicle and saying, okay, you can do the contracts between the supplier, the end user, and the securitization vehicle itself. And the refinancing itself, this is the so-called securitization of the bond purchases or bonds with institutional investors. This is then how this is done. Necessary are guarantees needed from investors' perspective. So an investor always wants to see that at least a share of the total investment is covered by guarantees if something completely fails. The business model addresses these three stakeholders, players. So we have on the top the investors, we have on the left side the technical suppliers, the solar collector suppliers, and we have the industry itself. The benefits for these three stakeholders is that the industry itself is more, the supplier itself is more or less based on his expertise. He knows that he can do it. A cash return after delivery, and this increases definitely also the customer creditworthiness. This is very important also for other projects. For the industry itself, we have the customer who receives these green projects, what is a big benefit and can be part of the marketing strategy behind it. And the investors itself, they have the green projects in their line, stable returns, low transaction costs, and low risks as they are covered by others. So a quick summary. The trustee is one possibility, of course, beside others, to address this green financing that is obviously needed. What is achieved so far is that we have the securitization vehicle established, automated and standardized project assessment platform is actually ongoing. So this is commercially available now. Whoever is interested in this can assess this platform and run this platform. The refinancing is especially addressing energy efficiency and renewable energy projects with a very strong focus on solar process heat. This is unique worldwide, actually, but we see that the interest in this setup is very high. Minimized risk, this is very important for all three players there. So for the end user itself, he or she is only paying for the energy, the investor, because the technical risk is covered by somebody else, and the supplier itself, because he gets the money back in the moment of a successful implementation of the project. Commercialization, I already mentioned. ongoing steps. So we are actually doing the refinancing of projects here in Austria and Sweden, and we're looking for projects worldwide. And also we are looking for investors and pool of suppliers to be ready to do this financing in the very near future, also worldwide. Extension to other technologies also has to be mentioned because actually, as I said, biomass, biogas, energy efficiency, and strong focus on the process heat, but we are intent to be open also to other technologies in the very near future. So to highlight again the success story of our project in Malaysia, you see which companies have already acted as host companies in the past. So they are the ones with whom we want to achieve all the climate targets that have been set. And we know that we have very promising concepts out there with which we can address and can implement solar process heat in the very near future. And at the very end, quick information also here. I want to highlight that next April we are going to organize a conference here in Graz. So if you intend to come to Austria in the near future, please have this in your mind. In September we are going to open our call for abstracts. So I'm really looking forward to welcome you next April here in Austria. Some colleagues of the PMU have already been in Graz when we did the last conference 3 years ago. With this, I want to close my presentation.